Hello.
You can hear me okay?
Yes. Can you hear
Fantastic.
us?
Hi
All
there.
right. Wonderful. All right. So how would you guys like me to do this? You just want me to introduce you one at a time or introduce all of you together and then you fill in your bio one after each other? What would you like to do?
I think rather than reading the bios, we'll just do super brief introductions. And Melanie's going to run the slides. So does she have screen sharing capabilities?
I hope so.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, she should.
Thank you. Yay. Oh, Melanie, okay, cool. Mm.
And then what would you like to do about chat questions? Where are the chat questions? Oh, here we go. Would you like to hold questions till the end or would you like to have questions, have me relay questions to you after each of you speak?
I think people can put them in the chat as we go, but we'll save time at the end to address all of them once we've
At the very
completed.
end.
Yeah,
Very good.
sound good?
Sounds good.
Back in regular view of the slides versus presentation view. I know. Do you want me to put it back in the presentation view? I could.
Yeah, that looks great.
Just making sure you know. The closed captioning is on. I don't know how to turn it off. Oh, I think I got it. Yeah, it stopped.
And are all sessions being recorded?
Yes.
Excellent. Mhm. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll get started in a couple minutes.
Okay, everyone, I have 11:55. I want to go ahead and get started and keep our session on time today. I'm Stephanie Green, and I'm actually faculty at Phoenix College, and I'm also open tri-chair, one of the tri-chairs of Open Maricopa. Apologize, it's been a long morning. Welcome, and I'm so excited for this presentation. I'm personally interested in it since I teach nutrition. So I'm going to turn it over to our speakers for the Culinary Medicine OER across campus collaboration. And Cheryl, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. We're just going to do really brief introductions. I'm Cheryl Casey, the Open Education Librarian at the University of Arizona.
I'm Melanie Hingle. I'm a professor of nutritional sciences at University of Arizona.
My name is Laura McCullough, and I'm the program manager for the Culinary Medicine Initiative.
Cheryl, I think that's my cue then, right? Thanks, everybody. I'm going to get us started. We're going to share this presentation today and take you on a few minutes, our journey. How do we get here? How do we produce this open education resource you're going to hear about? And so you'll hear a little bit of the behind the scenes, and we'll hopefully have a chance to get into a conversation as well if you have questions. And each of my colleagues will step in just a few minutes. So I'll kick us off by, let's see here, I can advance this slide. This works. I wanted to acknowledge not only is this presentation licensed through Creative Commons, but our work in general supported a few different ways. And one of the ways is by a grant awarded by USDA NIFA back in 2019. And you'll hear a little bit more about sort of how those students were involved. But this was a training grant for undergraduate students on the topic of culinary medicine. So thank you, USDA. As I mentioned, our purpose here today is to share how we created this culinary medicine open education resource, including funding. I think that's a question for a lot of people who are embarking on this creation, and how to navigate collaborative authoring, particularly when there are a lot of authors, including student authors, the production process, and then importantly, lessons that we've learned throughout this 2+ years. So I'll begin with the overview. Culinary medicine this came about in 2019. As I mentioned, we had a training grant on the topic because nutritional sciences at University of Arizona teaches a dietetics program, and our students are learning a lot about nutrition and health. They learn about food, and those things didn't come together in an integrated fashion until probably the early 2010s, when we started really thinking about our curriculum and getting feedback from community partners that our students were missing some integrative skill sets. And so thinking about this and searching for ideas, we came upon this concept. So culinary medicine is not something we came up with. It is a subdiscipline, actually, of food nutrition, human nutrition sciences. And it's defined as the integration of nutrition evidence, culinary techniques, all in the context of real world budgets, the time constraints we face, the diversity of economic, cultural, and social circumstances that people live in and work in and play in. And of course, the purpose is to support overall health and well-being. So integrating these skills, not something we learn standard as nutrition dietetics professionals. And one example, if I can give you one in your mind, is a food demonstration would be an example of a culinary medicine approach, because it integrates some nutrition messaging, some culinary techniques, and then you're trying to contextualize it for whomever your audience is. And we did a lot of discussing, and Cheryl and I have worked together for quite a long time we pitched this idea to a couple of different places, including her dean of the libraries and some other supporters on campus who were very enthusiastic, but there is a cost to developing OERs. And so we were very fortunate, after a couple of different tries, to get connected with Novo Nordisk, which is a pharmaceutical company, who awarded a gift to our Culinary Medicine Initiative to establish it. And as part of that, carve out funds to dedicate to develop this open educational resource that we developed. So we had 2-year funding, and it funded at multiple different community programs and community engaged work, and really in the area of education and outreach. So this was not a research project, but really to accelerate work that's going on in the community that was focused on culinary medicine, help with training of medical professionals and health professionals who don't typically have a lot of nutrition training, kind of help them get up to speed, make connections between different sectors, like the chefs, for instance, people who are really engaged in these different pieces. So that integrative, holistic piece was really important to us. And then importantly for the students, we wanted a free resource. So we were really excited to be able to publish something that did not cost students anything. Anybody can download it, as you know. That's the point of the OER. But in this area, which didn't really exist until we're putting it out there, we were really pleased to have that available for folks. And it was just published in December of last year. Our partners, it was very definitely across the university initiative, as well as out in the community and our students. So College of Medicine Phoenix was involved, Nutritional Sciences and Wellness. Here we're in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Cooperative Extension, and the university libraries were key partners. And our audience our initial audience, since we had to focus our OER, we were thinking was 400, 500 level nutrition science and medical students. And these are the folks who are the kind of frontline users of this textbook, although we hope and already kind of see it going much further than that to be utilized by community organizations, by extension colleagues, etc. Hopefully lots of you here. And the content, and we'll give you a couple peeks inside and give you a preview, include things, kitchen skills, very hands-on. We wanted to make it very practical, food safety, menu planning. So I said the basics of nutrition. Not so much a nutrition 101 text. We do have some basic nutrition information in here, but it really is different than a nutrition foundations textbook in that it was very applied. And we had case studies, we have videos, we have recipes, and then interactive activities with using the H5P modality. And then because of where we are in Arizona, we do have recipes that are in Spanish, and our approach was regional in terms of the kind of cultural bent that the recipes had for them, but we want to continue to build on that and be even more inclusive in the future in next iterations. I'm going to turn this over now to my colleague, Lauren, I believe, is next.
Thank you. I will take us on the collaborative journey. Next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a summary of all of the contributors to the OER. And firstly, we formed an editorial team, which included myself and the colleagues here, Cheryl and Melanie, as well as Dr. Scott Going, who is the former director of the School of Nutritional Sciences and Wellness. We also invited authors from not only University of Arizona's Nutritional Science, School of Nutritional Science and Wellness, but also Cooperative Extension and contributions from College of Medicine Phoenix. So we just put a call out asking for anyone who might be interested in helping us be a part of this journey. And we had a great response, which was exciting. But 18 authors is more than I think, typical from what I've understood about OER projects since. So that we'll definitely get into that later with the lessons learned. We also were fortunate to have the student contributors that Melanie had mentioned from the USDA grant and multicultural scholars. So we had 10 contributors, students as well. Next slide, please. With our funding, we were able to offer stipends, which is absolutely necessary because this was a lot of work for everyone involved. We also wanted to make sure that our final product was peer reviewed. So we did contract with 3 peer reviewers whom we found they have either worked on similar projects, connections through different colleagues in the field, and we paid each of them $1,000. We hired a copy editor, which we found through the editorial freelance Freelancers Association. Cheryl found them. They were excellent. So I'm sure if you reached out to her, she could give you that recommendation, especially with AMA citations, which we used, and they had a medical public health nutrition kind of background was their work. So they were very specialized. So great resource. And we also paid our authors a stipend. It varied whether they were a co-author or a lead author. So lead authors earned $2,500 and co-authors were $1,500. And we divided those stipends into 2 equal parts. And then the student contributors were also paid a stipend through that USDA Multicultural Scholars Grant. Next slide, please. We did have author and student contributor agreement forms for each so that all of the information about the copyright, which the copyright does belong to the Arizona Board of Regents for our policy for intellectual property, and how it would be licensed and all of that type of information, that the legal was shared with them and signed as a part of the project. And we have put, yep, Cheryl just put that we have copies of those agreements on the sessions website. So thank you. Next slide. We launched the project with 4 training sessions. We did an intro to OER, which Cheryl guided us through, providing just an orientation to what is OER if you haven't heard of it, where to find other OER, the different ways to find open sourced photos and everything that you might need to know We also did a training with another librarian on the topic of Zotero, specifically focusing on the group functionality of Zotero. So perhaps a chapter group could form and then use that function for their chapter. We then listened to our folks and heard that they wanted to have just kind of an open FAQ session. And so we hosted that, asking questions about tone, voice, and just making sure we were all on the same page about all the details with so many different author groups of this project. And then we hosted a final training on H5P, which is the interactive HTML5 style engagement tools that can be put into course classes as well as OERs. And one lesson learned, which we might address later, but just wanted to drop it here as well, is that it may have been better in hindsight to have done point of time, because the H5P training, for example, we did very early. We did it right away, but authors weren't really getting to the H5P step in the authoring process until much, much later. So it might have been better to have done it in that exact point in time. So one little lesson learned. Next slide, please. This is our timeline. So you can see that we had the workshops. That's how we kind of kicked off this project. We then had first drafts. We had the editorial team do a review with revisions, and then the peer review with revisions and copy editing. And really by that stage, it wasn't so much about revisions, but just getting the authors to look over what the copy editor had done and make sure there weren't any outstanding grievances of changes that were made, but they were mostly grammatical and for, clarity at that point. And then the big push of importing all of those documents into Pressbooks, the publishing platform that we used. And then again, having the authors look over that final, making sure that the way it looked mirrored what they felt like reflected their written work in Word documents. You can also see that our timeline, we were chugging along, and then we compressed a lot into that final semester as that deadline loomed. And we'll talk more about that in the lessons learned section. Next slide, please. We also encouraged the digital collaboration tools such as Word Online, Box, which is a affiliate that we have. We have a contractual agreement with the University of Arizona, and Zotero Teams. We wanted to ensure that folks had those collaboration tools available. And then we had one project manager that received submissions via emails. That was me. So I received all of them and put them in the box. But even with labeling, these are revised, this is the new, it was still, there's many, many versions floating around. So it was really important that we were communicating which versions, putting in the right place, and communicating among each other. I think that's it, but next slide. Yes, I'll stop here.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. And so I'll address some of our lessons learned. Next slide, please. It's really important to celebrate our wins. So we'll start with the successes. We had a strong team of authors and editors with lots of subject expertise. As Melanie mentioned, we were able to customize the content for our student audience, highlighting cultural relevancy and in particular serving Hispanic and Native American populations, since those are key in Arizona. And as you saw earlier, one of the recipes featured nopales or cactus pads, and we included the Spanish translations of some recipes. I think our biggest accomplishment was publishing the book by that December 2024 deadline, especially when things got so compressed. Since publication, the book's Pressbooks analytics show nearly 3,800 visitors and more than 8,500 page views. We've made sure the book is discoverable through the Open Textbook Library, the Pressbooks directory, OER Commons, and Merlot. And my co-editors promoted the book on social media. So actually LinkedIn and Facebook are our #1 and #3 sources of site traffic, which surprised me. And they also promoted it on disciplinary listservs and had the college produce a blog. So trying to get the word out as much as possible. And we know the book has been adopted at Northern Arizona University. Next slide, please. Not surprisingly, given the scope of this project, there were some challenges, and we share these with you so you benefit from our lessons learned. This was the team's first big textbook creation, including mine. In hindsight, it would have been super helpful to have hired a production manager dedicated to the OER. We had Lauren as the project manager overall, but she was doing much, much more than in the OER. It was a complex project to coordinate and format in Pressbooks with lots of tables, images, H5P, text boxes, and other elements. I have some background in publishing, but it was still a pretty steep learning curve. And I did appreciate Pressbooks' help with some of the more technical elements. It was challenging to coordinate, many different authors and student contributors. The authors all had busy day jobs, so deadlines were sometimes missed, and we got behind schedule. We ultimately had to publish without one chapter. And while the author agreement said that the second half of stipends would come after submission of final revisions, the payments were instead made after the first drafts were submitted. So we lost some of that payment leverage over authors as far as meeting deadlines for revisions after the peer review and copy editing stages. And your mileage might vary, but style book adherence and tool usage and training attendance weren't as robust as we'd hoped. I had developed this style book, and as Lauren mentioned, we had the training sessions, which might not have come right at the right time at point of need. At any rate, these things cause some issues later. For example, instead of using the recommended openly licensed or public domain images, some authors initially used Adobe stock images, which had to be replaced. The AMA style with its sequentially numbered in-text citations was very challenging when it came to revisions. We spent many frustrating hours on citation renumbering. So my advice would be to use a different style like APA. For the recipes, we initially included links to other organizations' recipes, but a peer reviewer suggested reproducing the recipes and photos in case of link rot. Great suggestion, but this introduces copyright concerns. So we made sure our recipes were in the public domain, primarily from .gov websites. For Arizona-specific recipes, I sought and obtained permission from AZ Health Zone to use them. And as far as accessibility, we wanted to ensure compliance with the upcoming Department of Justice rule and meet the WCAG 2.1 AA standards. So the author guide I had created tried to emphasize the importance of headings and alt text and other accessibility elements, but not everybody followed the guide. In Pressbooks, the table reformatting was a particular focus, and we used color contrast checkers and adjusted some of our custom colors to meet the minimum contrast ratios. Next slide, please. All of these resources are openly licensed so that you can adopt or adapt them yourselves. And as we said earlier, the copies of the author agreement and the student MOU are in Whova, and the PowerPoint deck I put in the chat. It's also in the conference Google Drive. These other resources were super helpful throughout the project. The Open Education Network's Pub 101 curriculum is fantastic. Lots of great advice, and it includes an adaptable OER publishing agreement, which we used. The OEN has lots of additional open textbook publishing resources. The Pressbooks user guide was vital. The Editorial Freelancers Association was recommended by our UA Press, and this is where we found our copy editor. You can also hire designers, indexers, and other publishing services here. I got dozens of responses to my copy editing job post within a day. It has a rate guide that's really useful and advice for hiring freelancers. The OER Starter Kit for Program Managers, fabulous resource on accessibility and all kinds of publishing topics. And then CUNY has an accessibility toolkit that's great. I also want to give a shout out to our copyright librarian, Ellen Dubinsky's, who is here. She was really instrumental in consultations on various aspects of this project too. Next slide. So to wrap things up, I wanted to share these 10 tips for authoring success. And these come from Linda Fredrickson in the OEN's guide on authoring open textbooks. I want to highlight just a few that really resonated with me in relation to this project. Number 10, good authoring begins with planning. So, think about that purpose, audience, voice, and the features that you want throughout the book, like key takeaways and H5P activities. Number 9, it's going to take longer than you think. Definitely true. Number 8, share the load. And so I'm so grateful to Lauren and Melanie and our other co-editor. Number 3, it doesn't have to be perfect. So be transparent about updates in the version history. We're going to meet soon about a next edition. OER can be continually improving. It's one of the great benefits. And number 2, think about ancillary resources. So Lauren has been adapting some of the textbook resources as handouts for community or course use. And number 1, embrace open. Of course, that's the reason we're all here today. Next slide, please. So I think we have enough time for some questions. I'm looking at the chat and don't see any quite yet, but feel free to either put your question in the chat or unmute yourself and ask it. If you have your own lessons learned from your own publishing projects, I would love to hear them.
Well, folks, thank you for that presentation. That was awesome. While we're waiting for someone else to chime in here and ask you guys a question, I just wanted to say thank you for doing that. And I agree with you. Formatting is a really big challenge once you get it all set up, and then you spend hours on that kind of thing, right? And it just makes you pull your hair out.
Melanie, do you want to talk a little bit about how we got connected with a corporate donor? Because I think that's a little bit unusual for OER projects. There are a lot of philanthropic groups or, federal funding or funding from universities, but this is kind of a rare corporate donor situation.
Yeah, sure. Cheryl, as you know, you and I have worked together even prior to that gift to figure out how to fund this idea, and went down the road of we had have an internal funding mechanism called a Provost Investment Fund that we applied for and were not successful in getting, but it helped us coalesce our ideas around this a little bit more and kind of let people know, put people on notice in a way that we were interested, and allowed us to have further conversations with others across campus who shared that interest. And then at the same time, we met our colleague at College of Medicine Phoenix who had a similar idea using culinary medicine. In his case, he's a physician, Dr. Shad Marvasti, and teaching medical students about nutrition. And so we joined forces. And then at that time, the development officer for College of Medicine Phoenix and ours in the College of Agriculture, Life, Environmental Science happened to upon a Rockefeller Foundation and an announcement that sounded a lot like what, kind of aligned with our interest. They ultimately were not interested in funding this, but then they referred us to Novo Nordisk, who was. So it was kind of a couple of different steps in there, but I think it really was the product of again, our, collaboration long-term and interdisciplinary work, because we certainly would not have been connected in the way that we were to the foundation had we not, met up with our colleague in Phoenix. But again, I think it was really fortuitous. So I don't know if there's a secret recipe for finding those kind of funds. I feel fortunate that we had that, but that's kind of how it happened. Yeah. Does that sound about right, Cheryl? Description wise? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I've heard other colleagues talk about, the importance of keeping those declined, unfunded proposals in your back pocket for when new opportunities come up. And they often have really quick deadlines, so it's nice to have those ready to go.
I fully support what you just said, and I always learn everything from all the proposals I've written, not just the ones that are successful. And yeah, definitely keep those around. There's a question in the chat, it looks like. How do we go about gathering feedback after we create the textbook from students that use the resource? You want to take that one, Cheryl?
Sure. This has not been implemented in U of A courses yet. That's planned for fall 2024. So we'll have to talk about how we're going to get student feedback. That's super important in terms of revisions and the peer review was a really great feedback mechanism, and we got really great advice that improved the book a lot. So having students test it will also improve it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We've got about 3 minutes left. We could take another question or two.
Thanks for the question. For those of you who have published OER yourselves, how does this, our experience and lessons learned align with your experience? I'm curious.
Well, I'm impressed with how much support you have to publish from the institution, and I know there was a financial award as well. That's been I'm with Pima College, so and an alum. But that's one challenge that I see. I have so many people that have stuff they put together, but it doesn't look like a final product, and just having that kind of support is awesome. I mean, makes the difference, right?
Huge, huge. I could just say thanks again to Cheryl and Alan, who are here because the libraries are they're the linchpin for all of this work, and we wouldn't have been able to do anything without that. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and so maybe any advice to get people inspired to join together on a project.
Money helps. I mean, the stipends really were, important, I think, to honor our colleagues' investment because, it was multiple rounds of revisions. I think by the end of it, I will say that even though we explained the process, it's one thing to hear the process and then another to go through it. And I think by that final revision round, some of the authors were kind of burnt out on the project by then. Like I wrote it, I've rewritten it, I've revised it, And so it takes a while to get there. So I think finding, even if it's a smaller group of folks, and if you don't have the funding, but understanding what you're getting into, and you all have that motivation to keep going in the face of all that adversity.
I think having a great idea is important. Totally what Lauren said, the realities of it. But if you're just starting out, I think what keeps people together, even like despite the bumps in the road, is the idea that you have. So like we were really excited about this idea. And that's what kept us rolling because we had so many people who are like, yeah, this is needed. So I think that to me is the most important thing is finding something that you're super stoked about. And then the rest of it, keep selling the idea, I guess, right? And Cheryl and I worked on that for a long time.
That's wonderful. Thank you all for presenting today. We are at time for today. Remember that you can get all the materials in the app as well as what they shared in the chat session
Thanks,
as
everybody.
well. So thank you all for presenting. It was a fantastic project.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.